They said it would save the neighborhood. I said it would ruin everything. The HOA president smiled like she already on the ground under my feet. 2 days later, the air turned yellow. The trees began to hiss, and the whole block smelled like rotten eggs. That was the day the earth fought back. I used to think I'd found peace here. My name's Daniel. 5 years ago, I bought this patch of land at the edge of Maplewood Estates. A quiet place where mornings started with the sound of sprinklers and the smell of wet grass. My garden was my pride, a little green world fenced in by oaks older than the neighborhood itself. The HOA mostly left me alone at first. Their rules were annoying. No sheds taller than 4 feet, no non-standard mailbox colors. But I could live with it. It wasn't until new leadership took over that everything changed. Karen Hallbrook became president, and suddenly every house had a warning notice taped to its door. She talked about modernizing the community, about creating sustainability projects. It all sounded harmless. Then she mentioned drilling. "There's water under there," she said during the meeting, pointing at a map that stopped exactly where my property began. That was the first time I felt the chill of something brewing beneath the surface. Within weeks, the HOA launched their community water initiative. They claimed it would help reduce utility costs by creating a shared underground water source. It sounded ridiculous, but people cheered anyway. Lower bills meant smiles. Only I noticed a fine print. The drilling site was on my land. I raised my hand at the meeting. "You don't have permission to dig on my property," I said. Karen's smile never wavered. "It's for everyone's benefit, Miss Elaine. The well will serve the community." "The community doesn't own my backyard," I replied. Her grin stiffened. "Then I suggest you review your HOA charter." The next day, I found survey markers along my fence line. Wooden stakes, pink flags, and spray paint cutting across the soil I'd nurtured for years. I called the HOA office. No answer. I emailed, no reply. Then came the rumbling. One morning, before sunrise, the sound of heavy machinery echoed through my window. I rushed outside barefoot and saw a drilling rig parked on my land. Workers in reflective vests moved fast, already driving metal into the dirt. "Stop!" I shouted, waving my arms. The foreman turned, confused. "We have authorization," he said. "Karen Hallbrook from the HOA signed off. She doesn't own this land." I snapped, "Get off my property." Karen appeared minutes later, heels clicking across my gravel driveway like she was walking a red carpet. "Daniel, calm down," she said sweetly. "You're holding up progress." Progress. I pointed at the rig tearing into my soil. "You're trespassing." She handed me a paper stamp with the HOA's logo. "Temporary access permit," she said smugly. I looked closer. Her signature, no legal seal, no county approval. A forgery. I pulled out my phone and called the sheriff's office. By the time deputies arrived, the drill had already sunk deep enough to shudder the ground. That's when the smell hit. Thick, sour, and heavy. The workers stopped. "That's not water," one muttered. "Keep going," Karen barked. "It's probably clay." A loud hiss erupted from the hole. Steam shot upward, white at first, then yellow. The men stumbled back, coughing. "Shut it down," the foreman yelled. Too late. The ground trembled and black sludge burst from the drill, splattering everything in range. The air burned my throat. I covered my mouth, backing away as the stench grew unbearable, like 1,000 rotten eggs and burnt rubber. Birds scattered from the trees, screeching. Within minutes, the grass turned brown, curling like paper in a fire. Karen stood frozen, her perfect smile gone, her hair whipping in the wind. What is that?" she whispered. "Sulfur," I said. "You hit a sulfur vein." By nightfall, the neighborhood looked like a war zone. Leaves fell from trees in clumps. The pond at the end of the street foamed white. News trucks arrived before sunrise, cameras capturing residents wearing masks and covering their faces. The HOA tried to downplay it. "A minor contamination," Karen said to a reporter, her voice trembling. But the environmental inspector wasn't buying it. "This is toxic gas exposure," he said. "Your drilling released hydrogen sulfide. It's going to kill everything that breathes it long enough." Within days, Every tree within 2 blocks was dead. Flowers shriveled. The once green lawns turned gray. People packed up and left. And through it all, Karen tried to shift the blame. "It's Daniel's fault," she shouted during a heated meeting in the community hall. He blocked the proper survey process. The inspector looked unimpressed. We checked the paperwork. "Mr. Lane never signed off. You forged authorization documents." Her face went white. "That's not true. We also found the drilling company you hired wasn't licensed." Silence. The entire HOA board stared at her, stunned. Karen Hallbrook, the inspector, said, "You're personally liable for environmental damage and fraud." The HOA fell apart overnight. Members resigned. Fines stacked higher than their community fund could pay. Cleanup crews rolled in with hazmat suits, sealing the well with concrete. I watched from my porch as they fenced off the scar in the ground. One worker turned to me. "You warned them." "3 times, I said. "And they ignored you." I nodded. "They thought they could control nature." He shook his head. "Nature doesn't negotiate." Months passed. The air cleared. I started over, removed the dead soil, replanted trees, built new fences. My yard came back to life, slowly but surely. The rest of the neighborhood wasn't so lucky. The HOA office sat empty, its windows boarded, the once white walls stained yellow from sulfur. Grass still wouldn't grow there. One evening, I stood at the edge of my garden, watching the sun dip behind the dead trees. The wind carried a faint trace of that old sulfur smell, just enough to remind me. I smiled quietly. "You wanted a water project," I whispered, "and you got one, just not the kind you planned." The land remembers. It always does.